Hello, everyone. Jordyn Smith, the voice and the astrologer for this YouTube channel, Nonconformist Conscience. Today, I am going to be going over the upcoming Aries Solar Eclipse happening on March 29th. Let's talk about some important things pertaining to this before I show you the event chart and do an untangling of the astrological conversations that are happening during this eclipse. The first thing you want to know is this is a metonic eclipse. I went over what a metonic eclipse is in the video I did going over the Virgo lunar eclipse. So if you haven't checked that out, you can. And that video is time-stamped, so you can go to where it talks about that particular dynamic. But it's important to note that this is a metonic eclipse happening. And the other thing that I wanted to say is I wrote about that in the article I did going over the Virgo eclipse. I will link that down below. And I also wrote an extensive article going over this eclipse. So if you're someone who likes to read or to have that, to pull it out, to go over stuff again, I will link that below as well too for you to check out if you desire to do so. So let's just recap a little bit. What is a solar eclipse? Archetypally, when do they happen? Why do they happen? A solar eclipse is whenever a new moon is happening within 12 degrees of the nodal axis. It can happen on the south node or it can happen on the north node that are transiting. And a new moon is whenever the sun and the moon conjunct. If you're new to astrology, that's what that is. A full moon is whenever the sun and the moon are opposing each other. So this is what we consider a partial eclipse. And you can tell whenever an eclipse is going to be partial because it is, either applying or separating from the nodal axis, but it's further out than 2 degrees. So this one is 12 degrees separating from the north node, the transiting north node. The other dynamic that I wanted to state is this is what we consider a hybrid eclipse. And a hybrid eclipse is whenever the lunation is happening in a different sign than the nodal axis. So the nodes, the transiting lunar nodes are in Virgo and Pisces, yet this solar eclipse is happening in the sign of Aries. So that's just good to keep in mind. And a hybrid eclipse is interesting whenever it does that because it is infusing the dynamics of both of those signs into the lunation. Whereas, past karmic dynamics are seen that we could be experiencing in the transiting lunar south node. And then the choices that we're needing to make are seen in the transiting north node, and you pull in their rulers. But whenever the lunation is happening in a different sign, it's either speaking to closing something up, like a lunar eclipse is about karmic endings, and it's pulling in that different energy. Whereas this is a solar eclipse speaking of a karmic beginning, yet it's a karmic beginning that is speaking to the dynamics of not only the sign of Aries, but also it's pulling in the dynamics of the North Node in Pisces, speaking to how we go about, one of the ways in which we go about initiating a new karmic beginning or a new karmic chapter is going to be seen within the choices that we're needing to make that are reflected in that lunar north node, its ruler, and then in this case, Pisces, Neptune, and then in your own natal chart, where your natal Neptune is. So there's that. Astrology is layers upon layers, and we're going to get into how this eclipse is bringing in some unfolding evolutionary wise and building off, some prior dynamics. So, with that being said, if you are someone who maybe you're new to astrology, or when looking at, maybe you've been learning astrology, but whenever looking at your chart, it's hard for you to understand objectively what's going on because you're the subject, and this is a science of observation and correlation. Reach out and book an appointment with me or another astrologer that you feel called to really go over what this is pertaining to. What are your karmic beginnings? What is this looking at evolutionary wise for you in order to help you grow and to evolve? How could you consciously utilize this? Because as I talk about this eclipse, this is a generalized overview. It's going to impact you in a different way. The essence of it will be there, but wherever this falls in your own chart by house and the aspects it's making, along with the other planetary conversations going on during this eclipse and where they're going on in your chart, what they're aspecting, is going to really pinpoint what this is meaning for you, what karmic beginning is wanting to manifest for you pertaining to your own soul evolution and your own karmic dynamics. So keep that in mind. And I do have that eclipse special running. If you want to know more about that special, you can go on my website and check it out. I will post a link below to see if that's something that you feel called to do if you're wanting to know more about this. So let's continue to talk and lay a foundation around this Aries solar eclipse. So karmic beginnings. This is a fascinating eclipse cycle. The eclipse portal that we're in right now is just absolutely fascinating. So if you think about how that Virgo lunar eclipse that happened on March 14th was really speaking to us culminating a 19-year evolutionary cycle pertaining to dynamics of a Virgo-like nature, and how, in 6 months, we will start a new 19-year cycle pertaining to that Virgo dynamic. And so the 6-month period is really about us finishing up business that started long, long ago, 19 years. Again, go check out that video if you want to know more about that or read the article. So we've got that layer. And then we have another component that is funneling into this solar eclipse, because this solar eclipse is building off of that lunar eclipse that we just had. That is about karmic endings. This lunation is about karmic beginnings. And if you think back to October 2nd of 2024, we had a solar eclipse in the sign of Libra at 9 or 10 degrees. I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but it was on the south node in Libra at that time. That was speaking to wrapping up prior dynamics revolving around our relational dynamics, how we relate to others, how we can hear where another is coming from, if someone's able to hear where we're coming from, if extremes have played out in our relationships of how we relate to others, if we were realizing that, values weren't aligning, all sorts of stuff was really wanting to surface at that time because that solar eclipse was happening on the south node. So it was interesting because it was initiating a karmic beginning, solar eclipse in Libra, around our one-on-one relationships, friends, family, business, work, significant others, trying to help us to come into more balance and harmony in the ways in which we relate to others and through staying sovereign to ourselves. Yet, that was a solar eclipse and it was happening on the South Node. So it was like, hey, there is something here from the past that we're needing to experience again in order to start a new karmic chapter or beginning of how we're relating to each other. This is interesting. Remembering that that was at, 9-10 degrees Libra on the lunar South Node. This solar eclipse is opposing that solar eclipse that happened on October 2nd. Yet this solar eclipse is happening on the North Node. So whatever was going on back then, what you were learning about yourself, how you related to others, what you were trying to initiate in a new way, revisiting old dynamics within relationships is now wanting to really culminate through taking that learning experience since October 2nd and now initiating a new karmic beginning of independence and freedom. It's Aries. But what is this reflecting? Like independence and freedom, that's very general. How? Well, this is ruled by Mars and Cancer. It's around applying the information we've been learning in these chunks of time 19 years ago, also back in the fall of last year, to now applying it and fully integrating it in order to cultivate new emotional patterns. Mars and Cancer, desiring to initiate this. So this is fascinating to think about. And then if you want to take this one layer further, I want you to think back 36 or so months ago when the nodes were actually in South Node Taurus, North Node, South Node Scorpio, North Node Taurus. Okay. There was a lot that we were confronting with that South Node in the sign of Scorpio, yet, and Pluto was in Capricorn. So we were looking at the ways in which our conditioning, society, religion, family, any type of external authority, our culture, had conditioned us around our values, our needs, how we related to ourselves, where we experienced abandonment, betrayal, loss, how that could have also been confronting us around our own emotional psychology, where we could have been resisting, cultivating self-reliance through understanding what our actual values and needs were, what our actual truths were, as opposed to how we were conditioned. That was seen with the North Node in Taurus. And then the nodes went into Libra and Aries. So the North Node's ruler, when the North Node was in Taurus, Venus, was now the South Node's ruler whenever the nodes were in Libra, Aries. And then we think about, we had when the nodes first entered into those two signs, Pluto was squaring the nodal axis. It was like, what are you going to do with what you just learned the last 18 months about your values and your needs? How are you going to utilize this to experience more autonomy and sovereignty and deal with your prior choices around how you related to others, South Node and Libra? And are you going to restructure your life, or are you going to resist restructuring your life and continue living out these kind of extremes of Aries and Libra dynamics, going from one to the other. Now that the nodes are in Virgo, South Node in Virgo, North Node in Pisces, Pisces ruler is Neptune, and Venus is retrograde. During this solar eclipse, she is ruled by Neptune, who is the higher octave of Venus. This is giving us a lot of information even within this, these layers upon layers. It is where we are called to really tap into that higher octave of Venus through cultivating deep inner emotional security, self-reliance, dissolving the past, self-esteem issues, self-worth, where we're, you know, um, getting validation outside of ourselves instead of empowering ourselves from within. This is a time where everything that you've been learning is now wanting to be applied in the here and the now. And that is part of this karmic beginning that is wanting to unfold. And it deals with our emotional patterns because that is what plays out within our relationship to self, our relationship to others, and how we evolve is through the emotional body. So this is really important to consider and to reflect on. It's a lot that's going on within this metonic cycle. Especially with these metonic eclipses. It's like I liken it to wanting, like getting the show on the road. You know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, at some point you've got to apply all that you've been learning and have a full integration into the here and now. So this can actually induce a lot of insecurity. Aries, an Aries moon can feel very insecure in the sense that it is wanting to absolutely break free of the past. It is wanting to start a new cycle. And this cycle, Aries moon solar eclipse, is ruled by Mars in Cancer. It's around initiating this new karmic beginning through applying what you've learned in the here and now in order to really see the efforts of the labor that you've put into your own growth and how it can look within your own emotional patterns. And so this solar eclipse is also asking for, there's an intensification of some Capricornian dynamics. You might not think that upon first glance, but I will break this down to you in the chart in a minute. And it's important for me to let you know that in the sign of Capricorn, the 10th house and Saturn, at some point, we have to emotionally mature. And this solar eclipse that is speaking to a new karmic beginning is reflecting our own emotional maturation process that has been underway. And it's wanting it to be integrated. It's wanting it to be lived out moment to moment, day by day. And within that archetype of the 10th house, Capricorn and Saturn, there is the dynamic of self-determination. And so we can be tested whenever it comes to an influx of energy dealing with that archetype. It is the soul test of you're going to get opportunities to put your money where your mouth is the way that comes to mind. Of things can come up that could be emotional triggers from the past. Mars and Cancer, especially in the first house of this event chart. We also have Mercury and Venus retrograde, which I will go over how this pertains to this situation. But what this is speaking and reflecting is that things can come up to test us, these things from the past, right? That are wanting to culminate. North Node in Pisces. that are wanting to wrap up that lunar Virgo, that Virgo lunar eclipse that just happened on the South Node. It is wanting to wrap up. It is wanting to be healed, Pisces. And the way to culminate and dissolve the past ways of structuring our emotional dynamics, our emotional patterns, our consciousness, our relationships, how we do relationship with others, how we relate to them, how we relate to ourselves is we will get these instances where we need to be responsible and accountable with the choices that we make. Choice making is seen within Mars and Aries. And so the dynamics that get brought up are actually these soul tests to be self-determined to not be who we once were. And it's about creating a new foundation and a new structure of emotional patterns within our consciousness for our own soul growth. And the way that we do that is through practicing. So we get these opportunities that kind of bring up past stuff, and then we get to make a choice. Do I want to do what I've done in the past? Or do I want to take that wisdom and utilize it to make a correct judgment and to be responsible with how I'm going to react to this situation on an emotional level now? And so as we do that each time and we make a correct judgment, we heal the past dynamic and we set a foundation for ourselves worth standing upon. And we learn more about ourselves in a way that is natural. And whenever we make these correct choices through correct judgment, we're talking about Capricorn and Aries stuff right here. What that does is it helps us to heal ourselves because we gain inner security and inner validation. Mars and Cancer. The South Node is falling in the fourth house of this chart as well. So, although this is about karmic beginnings, this is also reflecting how there are going to be tests for us to initiate this new evolutionary cycle and chapter. And it is going to take a lot of responsibility for each one of us to make sure that we don't do what we did in the past. This eclipse being an Aries ruled by Mars and Cancer, so much of it is really about making new choices, having new desires be seeded into our consciousness that help to, will have the ability to help us to feel more secure within ourselves. The beginning of this, though, it could feel a little awkward. It could feel a little scary. And that is because there is a lot of cardinal energy going on in this event chart. And cardinal energy is initiatory, but it is that 2 steps forward, 1 step back dynamic, meaning I like to say, I'm ripping off the Band-Aid. I'm going to start something new. I'm going to initiate it. I'm making this choice. And then it can induce this experience of fear because it's new. And so we can backslide or take that 1 step back into old patterns. But the thing about it is once you rip that Band-Aid off or you open Pandora's box or you initiate something new, the past isn't going to feel comfortable anymore. And so it's just going to propel one forward. And that is a nice thing that how the soul is designed, is that when we slide back into a past dynamic, it at first it's like this is what is known and this is familiar, but we've already had a taste of something that's been initiated. And so it's this insecurity that comes from even doing the past dynamic that we once did. And it's teaching us to cultivate more awareness, and it's teaching us to mature even more. And then we can utilize that information, you know, whenever something else comes up again. No, I'm not going to do that. So If you do a little bit of backsliding throughout the next 6 months, don't worry. It's okay. We're all learning here. That South Node in Virgo is teaching us that the value is in the effort, not the outcome, that we are not perfect, that this is a marathon and not a sprint. All right. Although with the Aries energy, it can be like, but I want it to be a sprint. I want to be done with this. I want to just go. Have some patience, have some faith, hope, trust, and compassion, all North Node Pisces stuff, as you utilize this energy. So, without further ado, let me show you this chart. And I'm going to annotate a couple of things, and then I will talk about them further. So the first thing that I want you all to know is, yes, this is the Greenwich chart. This is because this is where the longitudinal line on the Earth is at 0 degrees. This gives us the uh, best view of how this affects the collective equally everywhere. And therefore, I can utilize the houses that these planets are in as well. And this is fascinating. So I want you to look at Chiron, the solar eclipse, Mercury retrograde, Neptune, Venus retrograde, the North Node, and Saturn, all in the 10th house. All right. This is reflecting that dynamic of this is time to grow up or to utilize the wisdom that you've been garnering throughout 19 years, then 36 months ago, then 5 to 6 months ago. All of these things that have been building are now going to be tested in order for you to cultivate this new karmic beginning. So this is like these tests, that 10th house energy. The other thing I want to point out is the ruler of this solar eclipse is in the first house in Cancer. So it's in a cardinal sign and it's in a cardinal house, an angular house. Pluto is in Aquarius. It is in a cardinal house. And the ruler of this house that is conditioning this Pluto is this Saturn, who is balsamic to the North Node. And also, we've got the South Node of Virgo in a cardinal house, the 4th house. It is ruled by Mercury retrograde in Aries, in a cardinal sign, in a cardinal house. That within itself is a lot to think about, all right? So we need to pull in the energetics of a couple of things. As I said, this solar eclipse is ruled by Mars and Cancer. They are in what we call mutual reception. They are the rulers of each other. Then the ruler of the 7th house, which Pluto is inhabiting, is Saturn. And also, Pluto's ruler, Uranus, is also ruled by this Venus retrograde, and the South Node is ruled by that Mercury retrograde. So this is what I'm going to focus on for just right now. And also Chiron is square Mars. So let's hard stop, and then let's talk about this. That is a lot to even think about and to go over. So let me try to break this down for you guys in a way that is digestible and you can consciously utilize this. Pluto in that 7th house, Pluto, the ongoing evolutionary journey of this whole, is in Aquarius in the 7th house, and it is conditioned by Capricorn. This is kind of hearkening back to October 2nd when we had that solar eclipse on the south node, and it's also harkening back to Pluto being in Capricorn. What this is saying and speaking to, pertaining to this new karmic chapter, this new karmic beginning, is that we are absolutely needing to transform the ways in which we relate to others. Pluto and Aquarius in the 7th house. It is ruled by Uranus and Taurus in the 11th. How are we doing that? It is through liberating from where we've over-identified in the past with conditioning, Capricorn on that 7th house, Uranus, Aquarius, conditioned values, what's been learned, how we've been conditioned to need things, all of the things that we've been working on since the last 36 months when the nodes were in Taurus and Scorpio. It is saying, hey, what needs to be jettisoned from within? And if you're wanting to completely transform how you relate to others and the ways in which you do relationships, Pluto and Aquarius in the 7th house, there is going to need to be an inner transformation of how one relates to themselves. Uranus and Taurus. Saturn conditioning that Pluto, because it's the ruler of the 7th house. Saturn is in the 10th house. It is in Pisces, and it is balsamic to the north node. We are wanting to finish up the ways in which we have structured our personal realities through the learned, conditioned values, needs, expectations that we have taken in that are actually not in alignment with our unique individuality on a soul level. We're wanting to wrap this up. That way there can be this transformation of our relationship to self, but yet it's coming through the restructuring of our consciousness, aligning ourselves with more timeless, universal values, not man-made temporal values. So simply put, that can be relationships are transforming because now we're understanding how to integrate fully giving, sharing, and inclusion. Aquarius in the 7th house. Well, let's take that a bit further. What does that mean? It means that I know how to hear where you're coming from in order to actually give to you. I'm not going to project what I think that you need because I'm only coming from my own reality and what I would do. No, that's not how this works. It's also where we are starting to attract people who vibrate on the same wavelength as us because we have been doing this inner work. And so what that does is it actually transforms who we attract. We're starting to attract people of like mind, whose values align. Because a lot of us have been purging relationships of the past because we're realizing that maybe I'm growing, but you're not, and you're staying the same. And that's okay, that's where you're at. But there's not a lot of relatability anymore because we don't share values. We don't, share this or that anymore. And it's about coming into acceptance and to surrendering. A lot of us have been having to do that. And so now is where, through this new karmic beginning seen with the solar eclipse, we get to attract people who are now resonating with us, where we get to experience equity, equal giving, equal sharing. Okay, so there's that. And also, Uranus and Pluto are trying to the lunar south node in the 4th house. That speaks to there can still be prior dynamics of the past dealing with our emotional patterns that are still needing to be purged. But how do we do that? Again, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Well, luckily, this, solar eclipse is in Aries, and it is in mutual reception to its ruler Mars in Cancer. We do that through discerning and acting on what it is that we're desiring. And through that action, that choice, we are going to receive the counterpoint of feedback. And that feedback is going to give us new information about ourselves in order to self-adjust or self-improve, to understand, oh, here's another layer of this that needs to be, purged, or it needs to be improved upon. And so this is really helping us out with this dynamic. Um, it's going to, through the actions that we initiate, we are going to get to assimilate, Virgo, more information about ourselves. Mercury is the ruler of that south node. It is in Aries. It is ruled by that Mars in Cancer, and it's retrograde. What it's asking for us, though, throughout this process is to not get into intellectual gymnastics. It's where we are called to really tap into our instinct, Aries, Mars, and also our intuition. That is what a Mercury retrograde is speaking to. This also has another component, Mercury retrograde in this chart. It is where we are wanting to review, re-experience in order to resolve dynamics of where our thinking, our opinions, or what has been learned and conditioned has affected our ability to make a choice or has affected our sense of self-worth, how we talk to ourselves, the messages that we give to ourselves. It's also having us look at the ways in which we express or communicate with others and the need to be really responsible. Maybe we're needing to cultivate healthy boundaries and express those. So it's having us look at the ways in which we have classified or logically organized all types of dynamics pertaining to our emotions and how that ripples out into other areas of our life. And it's asking us to, on the one hand, to liberate from them, but to also tap into our intuition and our instinct, to trust our gut, Mars and Cancer ruling that, and to listen from within. This is also a dynamic that Mercury in that 10th house, retrograde in Aries, ruled by Mars in Cancer. There can be some type of dynamic that is needing to be resolved through communication or through having a conversation with someone. You might get the opportunity during this time to do that. This could be a test. How are you going to respond? How would you like to express yourself? How would you do it different than you did in the past? There can be a dynamic of, in the past, I wish I had said this, or in the past, I wish I would have chosen this. This can be that dynamic of where you get to have that soul test to be self-determined, to make a new choice around how you communicate or how you express with someone, or express something to someone. That's actually helping you to start this new karmic beginning of feeling secure and emotionally validating yourself. And it can promote healing. On the other hand, the flip side, this lunation is so speaking about choices, choice making. What do you desire? What are you desiring? How that is helping us to gain emotional maturation, to apply what has been learned, and to also cultivate more inner security. This can also be making a choice. There could be an opportunity that comes up, a family member, a sibling, especially it's Mercury, it's in the 10th house. It could be friends, children, whoever. They could come back around during this time, and that could be a test. Are you going to, for some people, see the potential, not learn from the past? You know, maybe you kept thinking, well, maybe this person's changed. And each time they've showed you, once you talk to them, that eventually the same dynamic happens all over again. This could be around making a choice to not communicate, to trust your intuition and your instinct. That is a choice. To not create that same action that you did in the past, to not do what you did in the past, can also be very healing and inwardly validating, and it can also cultivate a new emotional pattern. So there are choices that are needing to be made for some people around this area that they could be tested, where it's going to show that you have learned and that you are creating a new foundation of emotional patterns. The other thing that I want to speak to is Venus retrograde in Pisces. Can be soothing, healing energy around our inner relationship and our relationships to others. It can bring a lot of compassion, love, empathy. Um, it is ruling Uranus in Taurus. It is conjunct its higher octave Neptune. It is also conjunct the North Node, and it is also at the same degree that it was at around February 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. All right. Whatever was coming up for you then, whenever it passed over this degree the first time, could be coming back around and giving you an opportunity to surrender, to heal, to cultivate more, to tap into that higher octave Neptune, to to be in self-love, to be in self-compassion. That could be transformative to your inner relationship to self. All right. This could also be an evolutionary test around starting this new karmic beginning. This can be where some type of relational dynamic, whether with yourself or with someone else, can be revisited during this time. And it's giving an opportunity for you to make a new choice around how to handle it. That could actually promote healing for yourself, and the past dynamics. To me, this could definitely be where one could experience revisiting something where in the past they had rose-tinted glasses on, where they made excuses or only wanted to see the best, where possibly they could have been giving ultimate meaning to this relationship. This could be where you are tested to have self-reliance and to have faith and hope and to trust that if you listen from within yourself around what to do, this could be very healing for yourself. It could change the way you relate to yourself completely. And I also want to say that this could also be an opportunity where for some, they might be having to give that supreme form of giving, realizing it's what I talked about in the Virgo lunar eclipse video, where a person could come back around and they're really wanting you to help them. And you could be tested. You could be tested. Are you going to continue to get your self-worth or your value out of what you can do for others? Or are you going to tap into that supreme form of giving and really hear what it is that's going on, observing this person's actions? Have they changed? Have they been helping themselves? Or are they the same? Are they doing the same thing? If they are doing the same thing or they're not helping themselves, you might need to appear to not give. that can change the ways in which you relate to yourself. It can help you understand that your worth does not come from outside of yourself for what you can do for others. That sometimes when we are rooted in compassion and empathy, we can see that if we were to choose to help and to give to someone in the way that we did in the past, it would actually be enabling them. It could hinder their growth. So that could come around. This could also be this dynamic where we get to heal something in the past through conversating with someone else, through saying no, through saying yes, um, through choosing to not go back to the old way. What this is doing is it's helping us to initiate this new karmic beginning of emotional patterns. It's helping us to purge the past emotional psychologies. This can also be where we could be afraid to make that new choice because we might feel guilt, shame, and that is where we're needing to look at, has this been learned? Is that actually true? If you say no, why are you feeling guilty? Because are you actually helping them? Or are you, are you feeling guilty because you were taught that um, the only worth you have is whenever you do something for someone else? This could be coming up. There's all of this energy is in that 10th house. It's like these are karmic tests for this new karmic chapter and beginning that is wanting to occur. There are some other dynamics within this that I want to speak about before I share the chart some more. For some of us, this can be a time where we are cultivating more emotional security because we feel a higher calling or a higher purpose in some type of way. And there could be fear around initiating this. And really, the higher calling and the higher purpose could be the thing that is actually helping us to cultivate new emotional patterns. So, the key with this is that if there are any dynamics within your mental faculties where you feel inferior or not good enough or not ready enough yet, that could be asked to be initiated, like the action needing to be taken in order to really see that you have courage, you are your hero, you can do this. All right. Um, and the other dynamic that I do want to say that can come up for people right now is an Aries moon needs absolute freedom and independence to initiate all types of desires that are coming up because it's wanting to break free from the past and it's wanting to learn more about itself. And so, if there are dynamics where we are feeling thwarted or blocked from that externally, that is where we can experience anger or frustration. The other area that we can experience anger or frustration is if we are desiring something, but we're denying taking the necessary actions. That's pulling in this Aries Virgo dynamic. So the key with this is how we learn about ourselves is through our choice making. I've stated this. It's the below that is through our emotional body. Through our choices that we make, we receive that feedback and we learn through the experience of that on an emotional level. We are needing to observe and weigh out when a um a desire comes up for us during this time, the consequences of that choice. This is cultivating that emotional maturation. And a consequence can be negative or positive. It's like, in the past, I used to not think about things. I didn't know my limitations. I have Mars and Aries in the 12th house. I did not know my limitations. So I would do things just and um sometimes it worked out really well, and other times it didn't. And I have learned to, really observe and to make a correct judgment through weighing the consequences. What are the positive consequences of making this choice? What are the negative consequences of making this choice, taking this action? This is a time where we could be called to do that. We don't want to get hung up in inaction and fear, though, because that's where this self-implosion or this frustration and anger can come out, and then it can start coming out um, on other people. It is really needing to trust your instinct and your gut and allowing your soul to drive you. And if you're looking at and you're discerning if this is a necessary action for you, that can be scary. I had the dynamic of choosing this career path coming from an affluent religious family living in Oklahoma. And I was really afraid to do this, but yet I desired to do it. And I was afraid to do it because I was afraid of being judged. This is something that can come up with these dynamics. The consequences of me choosing this path were I could live authentically and follow the beat of my own drum and blaze my own path. And the other consequence was I could be judged and kicked out of groups of people, family, friends, this or that. And the consequence for a while, I did not. I kept putting it off. I kept putting it off. I made excuses. I did Virgo. And eventually I got very frustrated and very angry because I was not acting on what I desired to do for myself, for my own growth. I was doing what other people wanted me to do and expected me to do. And at some point, the frustration and the anger and the disillusioning experience outweighed the fear I was feeling of creating the action to move forwards in this path that felt authentic to me. Now, have I experienced grief and certain dynamics revolving around this? Yes, but I'm going to tell you it was the most liberating thing I ever did for myself, and I wouldn't take it back because I do something I love that I'm passionate about. And so it can even be these kind of dynamics that come up. So truly looking at what are the consequences? What are the consequences of doing what you desire? But what are the consequences of not doing that? How is that going to affect you emotionally? Are you suppressing something in yourself? Are you denying something in yourself? Could acting on your desire help you to learn more about yourself, to discover more about yourself? Could it be beneficial for other people? These are the things that are coming up. So the other thing that I want to show you is, remember, the past wants to be culminated. Venus retrograde ruled by this Neptune, Venus ruling that Uranus. Truly, this is a time that whenever you initiate this action and you start this karmic beginning, this new karmic chapter, it can change your vibration. You can start attracting people who are meant to be in your life and not the same old dynamics. That's also this Mars and this solar eclipse. It's like if you make the choices right now and you resolve them from the past, this is going to change your vibration and your inner magnetism, and you are going to attract things, people, places, things that are new, Aries, Mars, in the first house, that are going to help you to know deeper and deeper layers of yourself because it's not the same old dynamics anymore. And it's going to help you cultivate these new emotional patterns. So the other thing that I want to speak to is this Chiron is square Mars. It has been squaring Mars since September 2nd. And this is its final square before Mars opposes, Pluto and Aquarius whenever it moves into Leo. So And Ceres in the ninth house is square to Jupiter and Gemini in the 12th. Ceres is ruled by Neptune. Neptune is conjunct Gemini's ruler, Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde is the ruler of the South Node as well. So I want to talk about this. That is a signature that can induce a lot of insecurity as well. Chiron and Aries in the 10th house squaring Mars and Cancer. This is truly a need to create a action, to make a new choice whenever it comes to how we respond to emotional dynamics that get triggered, especially when they're hitting a tender area within us where we have been wounded. This can be wounding around fear, insecurity, also not creating action. This is really, it's asking for action. It's asking for us to make a different choice in order to change our awareness around this wounding. It's also asking for us to take the awareness that we have already been changing around our wounds and to apply it into the here and now. Ceres in Pisces square Jupiter and Gemini in the 12th house. The rulers of both are conjunct in that 10th house. Mars is also ruled by that. I mean, Mercury is also ruled by that Mars and Cancer as well. So it pulls in this dynamic of the wounding. Ceres is where we, in Pisces in the 9th house, is where we could have experienced a loss of faith, compassion, and belief in ourselves, where we could have lost feeling authentic or knowing our actual truth. And we are called to cultivate action, Ceres squaring Jupiter, to recover that through dissolving the old messages and the old beliefs that have, you know, where we've experienced rejection or inferiority or guilt and shame that is not ours, that has affected our emotional psychology, and our inability to cultivate new action or to act on what we desire, or where we get stuck in the same emotional habituations. This is asking for us to really tap into our intuition, excuse me, and to recover your actual truth of who you are and to nurture that with compassion and self-love. And to also forgive yourself if you've been hiding that or living a dualistic life, you know, knowing that you're different, but yet you're portraying yourself as maybe everyone else out of self-preservation. Whatever dynamic, this is wanting you to nurture yourself from within, have forgiveness of self for the old choices you've made, and to dissolve the old messages and the beliefs that you've taken in as truth that are not truth, that are lies, they're false. And then to expand upon your own inner knowledge of your actual truth, because it's going to help you to initiate this new karmic beginning of self-discovery of what? Your actual nature. So I want you to keep that in mind. Again, lots of healing going on, lots of resolving dynamics dealing with our thinking and our believing and our values and our needs. So there's that. Again, cultivating these new emotional patterns. Lots of action is wanting to be had. Lots of choice making, choices around how would you do this different? How would you do this now? How did you wish you did this in the past? And the other thing I want to say is Mars is trining Saturn. This is gorgeous energy. What this is saying is, as you take the initiative to apply the wisdom that you have gained from all of these experiences and you apply it to make new choices, it heals the past It cultivates a deeper sense of security over time. It's teaching you to have faith and to trust yourself. And then this is actually a signature where these new desires that feel like they're coming from on high, a vision for the future, can come in because it's needing to be acted on. And it is actually something that your soul is desiring to do in order to grow and to evolve. And this is further demonstrated by Mars is sextile Saturn, not Saturn, excuse me. Mars is sextile Uranus, and Uranus is sextile that Saturn, and Saturn is trining that. This speaks to trusting your inner voice because it can be divinely inspired and connected. What is your instinct, your intuition, and your inner voice telling you to do? What do you see for yourself? And then having faith and hope and trusting this process. um, it's really teaching you to have hope and faith and trust in yourself. It makes me think of, I have a child with a lot of Pisces in their chart. They have the moon conjunct Uranus, conjunct Mars, conjunct Venus, all in Pisces. This is actually, all of this stuff is aspecting their Pisces stuff. And it's in their fourth house. And it is sextiling their Taurus stuff in their sixth house. My kiddo is really reconnecting with the ability to trust themselves through listening to their inner voice. It's this Taurus Piscean dynamic. And they come home sometimes and they'll be telling me about something going on. And, I will ask them open-ended questions so that way they can ask and answer their own questions for themselves. And I always tell them, I trust that you can listen to yourself and make correct choices for yourself. And it's okay if it ends up not being what you thought it was. It's a growing opportunity. And, if you want me to help you troubleshoot this later on, you let me know. I have to say 9 times out of 10, because they're trusting their intuition and their gut and their inner voice, they are making a correct judgment call. They're doing what feels authentic and true for them. They're not abandoning themselves. So it can bring in this vibration. It can change your inner vibration because it's cultivating that self-reliance. I can trust that I can meet my need. I can trust that I know what is right for me. In the past, extremes play out in our relationships when we don't listen to that inner voice and when we don't trust ourselves and we're relying on someone else to meet that need or to tell us what to do or to make that choice for us. This solar eclipse says, no, this is you. You've got to trust yourself. That is going to cultivate emotional self-reliance and new emotional patterns. So this is your solar eclipse forecast. As always, if you have questions about this, I know I'm not going over a lot of asteroids during this time. The same vibe is there that I explained in the Virgo lunar eclipse because asteroids are slower moving. I want you to understand that. Cassandra, recovering your voice, healing your inner relationship, as I spoke, is a part of this. You could get tested around these dynamics. Aletheia around understanding and reconnecting with our truth and our authenticity is still here. Hecate is helping us. So is Vesta. If you want to know more about this, go check that old video out if you haven't. But these goddesses are still here and they are helping us. And remember, the one that I will say is Lilith is in Aquarius, and she is ruled by that Uranus. Lilith is our most undistorted natural expression of ourselves, man or woman. It is the undistorted masculine and feminine that resides in all of us. And this asteroid is saying to liberate from all of the conditioning and have a transformative process to become fully secure within yourself. Take the necessary actions. Don't submit. Be responsible, but you've got this. And so this, I do want to say for other people, I'm going to give a warning before I jump off of here. For other people, this can be where there could be enforced karmic beginnings for them, especially if during the last 2 weeks there's been a loss of something. This could be how it's forcing you to start a new karmic beginning. Trust yourself. You've got this. It's unknown territory. If that's the case, it's okay. I have a friend who their dad is in home hospice right now, and she's been taking care of him. And she's had a lot of responsibilities for a very long time. She also has a child. And she's been wanting freedom and independence, but she's also, her dad is her only living parent. There is a karmic ending that's happening for her, but there's also a karmic beginning that's also happening for her. And that, I know, even those dynamics can be very, very healing, even though they can induce a lot of fear. Challenge your conditioning or your thinking around if something's bad or good. Look at it around, what is this teaching me, and how can I utilize this in a way that's going to promote growth for myself? And you can't go wrong. How could this eventually promote growth for other people as well? This is very healing, and it's starting this chapter within a chapter, but yet closing up this old stuff. And ultimately, this is about reconnecting with your soul sovereignty. And it's about when we do this work and we initiate these things that we're desiring to do, that we know within ourselves is going to help us to grow, but it can be oh so scary. That teaches us about inner security and self-reliance once we do that. Once we do the thing that we might be afraid to do, I can trust myself. You know, I feel more secure within myself because, yeah, that was scary, but I did it and I learned a lot, and here I am. That changes that inner vibration, and you will attract new people, experiences into your life that are going to help with this process of understanding yourself on a very different emotional level than you have before. It's going to help you to continue to purge the past emotional dynamics, patterns, and psychology. It's going to give you an opportunity to practice, Virgo, all you've been learning, right? At some point, we have to put things in action. They just can't stay in our um in our mind. We can't just continue to think about them. At some point, we have to initiate that action in order to grow more. And this is really what this is speaking to. And so, trust yourself. I hope that this helps. I hope that it's beneficial. And I will say the day after this, Neptune moves into Aries. I am going to do a separate video on that because it's important to really speak about that for collective energies. the one thing that I will say pertaining to this solar eclipse is that if something felt like you was hidden or you weren't sure about it, or it, it was bubbling under your subconscious, or you were still trying to figure out, can I trust myself? What is going on? That Neptune moving into Aries for the first time, it'll retrograde back into Pisces later on in the year, but it entering into this sign at that critical degree of 0 can really be where whatever is needing to come out of hiding in order for us to create the action, whatever is needing to be known that maybe felt like we couldn't grasp or understand it, the day after this eclipse, it can really be revealed to us. And I want you to keep that in mind. And what that'll do is it's going to be ruled by Mars and Cancer. It will help us to heal emotional dynamics and patterns. So I hope to see some of you soon. If you have questions, let me know. And I will try to answer them. And I hope that you have a really happy, healing solar eclipse that promotes a whole bunch of growth. And it's okay if you feel afraid or you feel fear or but I also want you to think of what is the consequence of inaction. That is a big thing. We are needing to let the past go and to heal. And that is going to take more action in order to set a new foundation within our consciousness. So, happy Aries solar eclipse, my friends.